Yeah.
props to you for kind of just pursuing things, and not necessarily everyone's going to become an entrepreneur, but really doing an assessment of your life of like what means a lot to you.
Yeah, no, Lauren, I mean, it's a really great point, and I think it's very insightful, and probably the biggest genesis for me in terms of when I exited the company that I was in. Definitely there were opportunities to go back into corporate life, and I could go the next pharmaceutical company, another biotech, or some of those types of things. So the idea to kind of maybe take a pause and think about like, well, like, what am I pursuing? Am I pursuing the next title, vice president this, a chief of that, or whatever it was, and really
Mm-hmm.
taking that time, and just to assess, with family. And I was lucky; it was kind of like the late spring when I left the company, and kind of rolling into summertime. So it's a really nice time to kind of like, hey, let me take a pause and maybe do a little bit of traveling and some of that, but to really think about what do I want to do, what mark do I want to leave. I think my biggest, I think motivator was kind of seeing my efforts, or just kind of seeing that like actually have an impact on the business. I think it's something.
Welcome to the Erie Wellness Podcast, your go-to source for all things health, wellness, and living your best life right here in Erie. I'm your host, Lauren Brunetti, and I'm so excited to have you here. Each episode will dive into conversations with local experts and wellness professionals who are making an impact in the world of health and well-being. Before we jump in, be sure to like, share, and comment on this episode. We love hearing from you and seeing our community grow. Now let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I am very excited for this episode. We have brought on Nate Crisel. He has created a wellness brand with his business partner out of Niwot, which I'm very excited to share with you. I'm actually drinking it, Think Tank, right now in my coffee as we do this podcast recording. But really, I wanted just for Nate to share his story. And with the help of his business partner, his family and friends, they've come up with this really amazing product and brand that they're hoping to evolve. So just really looking forward to the discussion. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Great, Laura. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be with you.
Why don't you share, you worked in corporate America, you did the 9 to 5 grinding, all of that, and then kind of made a shift. So why don't you tell the listeners your story?
Yeah. So I used to call myself a lifer in the pharmaceutical industry. So I started my career as an analytical chemist right out of school, working for Eli Lilly and Company. And I basically spent, I'd say the vast majority of, like almost 25, 26 years in pharma. So various different roles. I had been, like I said, a chemist. I worked in, product development, even like some strategy types of things in various different different companies and different roles. I took a break a little bit in maybe the middle part of my career to get an MBA that was very entrepreneurship focused, like biomedical entrepreneurship focused. Dabbled a little bit in like small startup companies in the life science space, like radiochemistry, diagnostics, and then went back into pharma for kind of like, I would say, like the last part of my big pharma career. But yeah, when I had an opportunity to exit that, and just to really analyze what I wanted to do next, that was where I've always been really health focused, really focused on like fitness, and like try to get a workout in, and like part of that came with maybe just my background in pharmaceuticals and chemistry of like dabbling a little bit here and there. And so once I had some more free time, had exited kind of that corporate role, I could like, oh yeah, hey, let me see if there's something here, and then really kind of stumbled into, I think, what was a unique product concept at the time. And so it was really almost a nice confluence of things where I had some time and room to breathe after exiting, kind of the big pharma, and then and maybe just having an idea for a new product and something I thought was novel that I hadn't seen somewhere else. So that's.
And you had moved to Colorado, right? Kind of in that smack dab of all that, right?
Yeah, so actually it was a little bit before that. We moved to Colorado from Chicago during COVID, and so when the company for whom I was working When that went remote and they did fully remote, the U.S. headquarters was based in Chicago. It was a Japanese, or still is a Japanese pharmaceutical company. But when they went fully remote, we said, hey, if we can live anywhere, we thought we'd move out of Chicago and move, or Chicago area, and move here to the closer to the mountains. We grew up,
Mhm.
both my wife Amanda and I, we grew up skiing mostly on family vacations and that kind of thing. Her parents live in Breckenridge now. I have some family, extended family that's here, but just something where, again, a little bit more aligned, I think, to that health and wellness and type of lifestyle. I'm an avid biker, and I like hiking and getting out and running and that kind of thing, and just being able to ski, which not just on spring break or President's Day weekend or Christmas and New Year's. That was a big driver for us to move out here. So
Mhm.
that was in 2020 that we moved out.
Well, I give you props for, really assessing like, what do I want? What's my purpose in
Mm,
life? Am I really
yeah,
enjoying what I'm doing anymore? Is there more that I can be doing that I'm more passionate about? And
yeah,
just pursuing that and, just seeing what opportunities are out there. I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are like in their 40s and like, what do I want my career to be? And so
yeah.
props to you for kind of just pursuing things, and not necessarily everyone's gonna become an entrepreneur, but really doing an assessment of your life of like what means a lot to you.
Yeah, no, Lauren, I mean, it's a really great point, and I think it's very insightful, and probably the biggest genesis for me in terms of when I exited the company that I was in. Definitely there were opportunities to go back into corporate life. I could go the next pharmaceutical company, another biotech, or some of those types of things. So the idea to kind of maybe take a pause and think about, like, well, like, what am I pursuing? Am I pursuing the next title, a vice president this, a chief of that, or whatever it was, and really
Mhm.
taking that time, and just to assess, with family. And I was lucky; it was kind of like the late spring when I left the company, and kind of rolling into summertime. So it's a really nice time to kind of like, hey, let me take a pause and maybe do a little bit of traveling and some of that, but to really think about, what do I want to do? What mark do I want to leave? I think my biggest, I think motivator was kind of seeing my efforts, or just kind of seeing that, like, actually have an impact on the business. I think it's sometimes when we get into some of these larger corporations, or we get complacent ourselves, you start to feel like a little bit of a cog in the wheel, and it's like, ah, man, if I work my tail off, is it really going to have an impact at the end of the day, into the month, into the quarter? And I was feeling some of that burnout. And so then you can get that, maybe just that time to analyze and reflect and just assess of, what do you really want to do? And, what mental muscle do you want to flex, or what part of your experience you want to draw upon for that next stage of whatever you're doing. And I think it was a great luxury. I think it's just a really nice thing to be able to do,
Mhm.
for us. But
Mhm.
yeah.
So you had decided to make the shift, and then what made you even decide to pursue creating a so your brand is
Yeah,
Sköshify, and the
correct. Yeah.
product in particular that we're talking about today is Think Tank. But how did all of those ideas come into place, and what did that look like as you were kind of transitioning out of your role and brainstorming
Yeah.
what the next phase was going to look like for you?
Yeah, no, it's so like I mentioned, I think I've always been dabbling in the health and wellness space, and I would say, like, different like protocols and things, or maybe some people would call them fads or trends. But um, so the genesis for Scotiafy really came from trying to get an edge, and it was right as I was kind of maybe leaving the pharma company, and I was mixing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I would have like a protein drink, and then I was like, oh well, I read a lot about like intermittent fasting, and I was like, oh well, what if? Well, I don't want the protein drink anymore in the morning. So what if I did my little bit of this and a little bit of that into a cup of coffee? And I'm a big coffee drinker. Probably drink maybe a little bit too much, but that's that's kind of how it started off. And so the essence of Scotiafy really was like, hey, you can use coffee as a vehicle for different types of supplements, and and that's really what we kind of what I discovered as I was kind of experimenting on myself. Was I was like, oh, I bet this tastes terrible. It makes my coffee taste just awful. And I was like, oh, it's not that bad. I mean, we could, do a little tweaking, a little bit of that. And it still had some of the same effects that you thought, if not maybe a little bit of boosted effect, just from being like in a warm solution and things you might get a little bit of a faster onset of action for certain things. So that was the genesis. And that was, kind of my aha moment of like, oh, hey, there's not that there was a product or a company there, but like, oh, hey, this is something that's kind of unique. And I was like, oh, well, I did the research and, I think everything that I take and put in my body, I kind of do some research on just to make sure it's not total, pseudoscience or snake oil. But so once I had, kind of that formulation down, I think the real tipping point for me, I mean, there are two different aspects of this. One is you mentioned my wife, Amanda, earlier. So she's very open about having some early onset menopause, and a lot of the cognitive, I would say, impacts that happened at that stage of life, with like you'll call it brain fog. And she was suffering, from that. And so when I kind of, tested one of my first prototypes on her and you kind of dialed it in a little bit, and she's like, yeah, that's real. Like there's something there. And so it really had helped her, kind of come maybe with some of those symptoms that she was experiencing. So that was one. And the second one was I mentioned my business partner, a gentleman named Marcus Lawson, who is also very open about some of his health struggles. He's a cancer survivor and had a pretty hardcore course of chemotherapy. And a lot of that stuff comes with like that chemo brain is what people call it. And so it's just like similar to that brain fog with, that are associated with women in midlife, or maybe just all of us in midlife, frankly. But that was something, and this, with some of the early prototypes, helped him out as well. And like, okay, all right, there's something here. And so that was, really where we said, let's see if we can make something out of this, if not just maybe a single product company or kind of a broader, scope of using kind of coffee or tea or kind of like a warm beverage as a vehicle for supplementation. It has, like I said, has some knock-on benefits as well. But that's how it started off. It was just, dabbling one morning and testing
I know,
it
I'm
on
trying
friends
to
and
like
family.
envision you in I'm like, what is he mixing? Granted, he is a chemist, everyone. So, and his wife is a doctor. She's a pharmacist, so they know their things. It's not like they're randomly mixing things in their kitchen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, like
Every,
what were you like? Were you buying things and like kind of trying to create your own concoctions, or?
Yeah. So that's the way. So it's amazing. There's so many different, sources and suppliers of supplements, and not everything is kind of a fully formulated, flavored, proprietary formulation. So you can go and find kind of the pure ingredients, and some you got to be careful with some stuff because it's like some stuff is very concentrated, but yeah, no, it's funny. Our kitchen became kind of the test lab. And I have a little microgram scale, and but I would buy the pure stuff, and that was the thing that was important for us is let's get the stuff that we can ensure the quality, ensure the purity, and then we can say like, all right, hey, let's this is what the research is based on, and then we could dial in the formulation that way. So yes, so I'm a chemist. Yeah, like I said, I'm a chemist by training, and I think a lot of my experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and it's second generation. Both my parents were in pharma their entire careers. My older brothers been in pharma the whole thing, and so I come by this maybe somewhat naturally, but I think just that focus on chemical purity and making sure we've got the right amounts, at the right, kind of in the right ratios. That was a critical thing for us. I think a lot of my academic background and early professional background kind of lent itself to that. I've probably, maybe this will be one thing I can maybe share with you and the listeners at some point in time. I've even got my mom, when they came to visit, I've got her in a lab coat and like, the hairnet and the mask, like helping me mix something together. She's a biochemist by training, worked in that field. So that's something we could, but that was to have her in the kitchen helping us formulate some stuff. But
That's so fun.
So yeah.
So when did you like start getting excited where you're like, oh, I think we have something and like this could be working? And when did you decide to essentially become a brand?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I mentioned the early pieces of test with Amanda and Marcus, my business partner, but I think again the one where we really felt we had something was when one of our initial test markets was actually here locally in Niwot over the holidays. We actually put some sample packs in the holiday tote bags in like the Niwot shopping, extravaganza. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and we were like, oh, we didn't think anything came of it, but I actually had someone track me down, like that somebody we didn't know had zero interest in the product, didn't know Marcus, Amanda, me from anyone, and they they were raving about the product and like kind of found our website, through the Niwot Business Association, and so that's where I think that was probably maybe November, December of last year, where it really like our eyes were open of like, okay, this is meaningful to people and not just something are we fooling ourselves? Like we did it and we
Mm-hmm.
believe it, but we know what's in it and we have a vested interest here. But to have some like a complete stranger, in a small, like a tiny little test market to give us, that kind of feedback and to take the steps to go and like kind of track us down. So we weren't at that point in time, we didn't have a real product. We didn't even have, we were maybe like 3 brand names prior. So, we did a lot of development there. So they tracked us down to do that. So that was probably the big watershed moment,
Mm-hmm.
for us to say like, yeah, we gotta put this out there and make a real product out of it.
So for the everyday
Yeah.
customer, how would you explain a think tank to them?
Yeah, so this maybe a couple different things is so it's a powder formulation meant to mix right into your coffee and tea, flavorless, no sweeteners, no additives, really kind of what you see is what you get, and we go after really the aspects of purity, quality, and transparency, on the formulation. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's gonna be every product, not just think tank. That's gonna be every product that we come up with. That's just something that's just really critical for us, is we're gonna put it out. One for ourselves, for our families, and for the community. It's just making sure you have a quality product. So that's probably job one there, and that's how I would explain it. But the think tank specifically, it works through, I would say, kind of like 3 main mechanisms of action. And this is, based in the literature, and I'm going to take some liberties here just to help explain it. But one is, producing, helping your body produce energy, right? So your brain's very energy intense. It's like only what makes up like whatever 6-7% of your body mass, but actually consumes like 25-ish% of your body's energy. And so having something, like creatine is in the formulation, but having something like that to help your body produce energy that your brain needs to function effectively. So that's one key
Mm-hmm.
mechanism of action that's included in the think tank formulation. The other one really has to do with kind of how your brain functions. So kind of like think about maybe signals and then receiving those signals. So one key mechanism is helping your body or helping your brain produce more neurotransmitters, so kind of those signals that are sent, in between neurons in your brain. So we have a lot of neurotransmitter precursors that are in the think tank formulation that actually help your body produce or your brain produce those neurotransmitters. And the
Mm-hmm.
other kind of third mechanism of action is kind of that receptor optimization. So if you're sending a signal, you have to have something to receive it. And so that's really where we kind of that receptor optimization, or receptor modulation, making sure things don't get overexcited, as you can have. That's the other kind of way that think tank works. I'm taking a few liberties, so if there's some really hardcore, but neuroscientists out there, hopefully I didn't do them too much of an injustice.
No, I
Yeah.
think that's good. There might be more scientific people that want to know more, but for some of us, we're just like, tell me how it's going to help me, what it's going to do. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
Um,
Perfect. Yeah.
do you have to take it? So you need to mix it in with something hot.
Yeah,
That's one
yeah, or
key.
warm. Yeah, warm or hot. Yeah, sometimes like if something is too cold, you might see like a little bit of sediment in the bottom of your cup, but it'll still work. I mean, it'll still work in your body. It just may not. It may look a little funky, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why we say something like a warm beverage, like a coffee or tea, is probably optimum for that.
Okay.
But it does work with anything. Yeah,
And for someone who's intermittent fasting, like you said, you had mentioned,
yeah.
like, is this something that is going to raise our blood sugar at all, or no? Like, it can be
No,
used. Okay.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but yeah, but absolutely. It will not raise your blood sugar. So there's no artificial sweeteners. It's very taste neutral. No actual sweeteners in it at all. Yeah, zero. I mean, zero calories, frankly. So again, I think it's nice for that intermittent fasting, but it does also work if you're in a fed state, you like to have maybe a decent sized breakfast. That's something that also works with that as well. So
And I feel like on the instructions it said to drink within 30 minutes, right? Some people who like drink coffee all throughout the whole entire morning, you're
yeah,
like, you might not see the benefits if you're not drinking it within a certain amount of time.
yeah. So that's accurate. So there's a couple different things. A couple of different reasons we saw we put that on there. So one is in a warm beverage, we just want to make sure that like none of the products are kind of breaking down, in that. So like once you have something in solution, certain things will degrade over time. So um, some of the research is a little bit unclear about that, kind of like what the time frame is. So we were really conservative and said, hey, drink it within 30 minutes, and that's make sure you get kind of the maximum effect that you're going to have
Hmm.
there. The other interesting thing about think tank, maybe there's two things about think tank, and hopefully I think our other products will follow suit with this. But with think tank, it's got people do report an onset of action within 30 to 45 minutes after consuming it. And so it's kind of a unique benefit, which you don't see with a lot of like, capsule or pill formulations of like brain enhancing or nootropic supplements. So that's a unique feature for think tanks. So maybe the faster you slug it down, the more rapidly you'll feel the effects. And then the other one, I mean, there's research actually with each one of the different formulations or the different ingredients we have in the formulation for maybe 4 out of the 7. There's decent literature to support a rapid onset of action with that. So it's not just placebo effect and people think there's actually some research behind this. And then the other one that's unique, I think about or relatively unique about think tank is it works from the first dose. So and again, this is something we expected it to happen, but we didn't, or we thought it might happen. We didn't, fully, think that was going to be real. But with the person that tracked us down after one of our first test markets, she said like felt the effect right after the first dose because we only put maybe 3 samples in a pack, and so she noticed it within that very first dose. And so that we call that kind of like an on-demand type of use where you don't have to take it chronically. So a lot of different products you'll see it's like, well, take 3 pills a day every day, and then you get the effects after maybe a certain build-up period of time. So with think tank, I mean, yeah, there are some products in some ingredients in our formulation that actually would be you'll see some, maybe an accumulated effect, but the majority of the benefits that we have in think tank you'll notice on demand from that first dose.
Okay. And what I love is, I mean, we should all be worried about what's in the things that we're consuming, right?
Yeah,
But especially if your business partner is someone who's gone through cancer, like ingredients are huge and,
yeah,
trying to eliminate toxins and all the things. So if he can vouch for this is a clean product, this is
yeah.
something you can take even when you're on that particular journey, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and you bring up a really good point. Part of I mentioned some of our founding principles and that just that quality and purity and transparency, and
Hmm.
that's it was really critical for us. And I think we didn't just choose the ingredients or of the formulation. Again, we sought after like they come the highest quality of creatine we were going to put in there. We also opted for more. I would say kind of pure form of things. So instead of going after like maybe like a mushroom or like a whole mushroom kind of powder or something like that, we opted for extract where we had natural products, or we had other ones that are maybe they're naturally occurring, but we would go through like a synthetic formulation of those just so we could ensure the purity that those are created with. And so that was kind of a key aspect of the formulation that we did. And then we also then went back. We spent a lot of time and effort to prove that through third party testing. So testing for the absence of any like heavy metals or pesticides or like like make sure like hey if we said there's you know this amount of creatine in there, it actually had that amount of creatine and it was pure and it was unadulterated and some of those types of things. And so we said there's 125 milligrams of this. There was 125 milligrams plus or minus virtually nothing of that in each one of our different stick packs. And so we spent, again, a lot of energy and probably even just money, in our first manufacturing run, just to make sure that we could, what we said was proven not by us or our manufacturer, but by a totally independent third party to do that. So it just
Hmm.
goes along with that kind of that quality and purity ethos that we have.
which is great in this particular culture, especially here in Colorado, this
Yep.
Boulder, Niwot, Erie community. We're all very health conscious and appreciate those more natural products. So,
Yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. So yeah,
as you
it's
were
yeah,
talking, though, I'm intrigued. Like, for someone who's interested in creating their own product or has these ideas. I mean, I'm sure you've learned more than you ever thought you would learn about like the
yeah.
manufacturing process, about all the things. But what's your advice to someone who's kind of just starting off and is interested?
Yeah, I've it's a great question. I think, I think one is just have confidence like in yourself that you can figure something out. Like, so like, it definitely has to be, like you have to have a passion, right, for
Mhm,
something, right? So I think that's probably the biggest one is just make sure that you really are, this is what you're meant to be doing, that you've got a
mhm,
passion for it, that you believe in it, you believe in the product, you believe it, or the service, or whatever you're going to go do. So I think that's probably for me, that's number one is just make sure you kind of have that. And I think what that lends you to do is like, okay, you can spend the time, you can have the confidence that you can figure stuff out, right?
mhm,
So I mean, I'm not the first person to say that. So I'm probably, maybe the 1 million first, or maybe, I don't know, 1 billion first person to say it. But like, you don't have to see the entire path from like zero to, you know, success, however you want to define success, all from before you even take the first step, right? So you
mhm.
don't have to see that whole path in excruciating detail before you can like, oh, I got to take the first step. It's like, look, no, look, you like, oh, what do I do? Like, what are the first thing I need to do? Well, I think it's this. All right, let's go
Try
do
it out.
that, right? And try
Mhm,
it out, right? I mean, and I think that's like just having a confidence, like that you can. Okay, hey, I'll take that first step. Maybe it wasn't exactly in the right direction, but it got you off the starting blocks. I'm mixing my metaphors quite a bit here, but I think that's something where, just start. And I think you also be really surprised. One of my biggest surprises is how much, like how many resources there are to help you along your journey. And it's, I mean, everything from, whatever the new generative AI types of things, just to help you like as a thought partner to like, help you explore different areas or help you do some research or help you digest something. I mean, like stuff like that to like, it's amazing how many service providers are out there in your space. And you can just like, hey, I want to bounce something off of you. Or like, are you right for me? Or I need to go find somebody who can help me manufacture this, or like who can make boxes, or who can formulate something, or I need to ask somebody, a professor. Like, all right, yeah, just go
mhm,
ask them. It's amazing in this day and age how many like just resources are out there, and it's also, just I don't know. I tend to like see the best in people at whatever all the time. I probably get it. I'm a little bit of an optimist, but it's just going out and like sending somebody an email totally cold, asking for help, or like, hey, can I just have a conversation? No, whatever, I'll buy you coffee or whatever it is. And I think that
mhm,
I was really struck, by how many people are just open to doing that. And then how many people like who specialize. It's like you think, oh, I'm too specialized. No, I guarantee you're not. I mean, there are people out there that have, probably been there and done that. Or can at least have some advice that's, adjacent to your space that could really help you out. So maybe
mhm.
hopefully a few nuggets in there, but like,
No,
have
that's really
confidence. Yeah,
good. But
yeah,
there was a
yep,
lot of little
yep,
nuggets. I feel like,
yeah,
and one thing that has always stuck with me is most things are figure outable, right? You can figure
yes,
things out. It might not happen the first time around, but and like you said, as long as you have confidence in yourself, you feel like you have a purpose and what you're
yeah,
doing is something that you believe in, and you utilize your network, you don't know what kind of things and what kind of doors will open up.
yeah. No, it's 100%. I think you stated it really nicely there. You're right. There are very few problems that are not figure outable, and I think there's also very few where it's like, look, even if you make that mistake, that's not a fatal mistake. It's like, look, you can
Mhm.
recover from stuff, and it's like, look, you know, there's a lot of things where we made a lot of, I mean, when we're still making mistakes now with Sköshify and Think Tank and things, and it's like, look, we're like, oh, I wish I would have done something differently. Okay, great. Like, is that gonna sink the business? No. I mean, yeah, would I wish would it set us back a couple weeks? Yeah, probably. But again, I think that's the point of like that most everything's figure outable, and like almost nothing is fatal in that way. Especially again, if you're doing things for the right reasons. You're just being, kind of well measured, well thought out, and
Right.
well intentioned. Um,
Well, thanks for sharing that. I felt like you would be a good person, if someone else is listening and they have these
Yeah.
ideas, proof that even like here in our community, people are pursuing things that they're passionate about and they want to try and that they believe in. So I thought your story would resonate with
Yeah.
them. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that.
No, happy to do it. And actually, I'll put my money where my mouth is. If anybody just wants to get started or they want some piece of advice, it's free and worth every penny. But feel free. You can hit me up, Nate at Sköshify.com. That's direct. But yeah, I'm more than happy to help advise and do anything like that.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll make sure to include your contact information in the show notes.
perfect.
But let's head back. Let's steer back to the product itself. So, where can people find Think Tank?
Yeah, so we're selling it. So right now we're distributing through Amazon exclusively right now. So you can find us on the Amazon page. Or also you can access that through our website, so www.scotiafy.com. Yeah, that was kind of the easiest thing for us to kind of get up and going and do it that way. Was going through Amazon. We're going to be working on a few other maybe channels, if you will, and maybe look out for us. Maybe in the relatively near future, we're going to try out some point of sale kind of retail sales here, but here locally.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for that. But right now, either through the website or directly on Amazon.
Do you put like your little pop-up shops that you guys have been kind of doing in and around the area on your website or on social media where
Oh,
people can like maybe
yeah.
pop in if they're around?
Yeah, that's a good, you know what, Lauren, that's a really, really good idea. So we haven't yet. We usually do them maybe post hoc. So we'll do them after the fact. We'll just like, oh yeah, hey, we were at, the Rayback Collective or we were here. But I think, we'll be doing that much more proactively as we go forward and we're at different places. We were, dog days of summer, but being a little bit more proactive in how we're doing that is, but yeah. So short answer, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you do a newsletter or anything where people can sign up for notifications or anything?
Yeah, so we don't advertise it as much. So definitely on our website, we offer a discount for people if they sign up with their email addresses, and so yeah, so we
Mhm.
definitely do that.
Okay.
So if you just kind of scroll a little bit down on the website, we have a pop up. You give us your email address, you get a discount code, and then we'll send you some additional information.
Okay. I did want to point out the fact that you said that this product in particular works with women. And while men do listen to this podcast, a lot of our listeners are women
Yeah.
in that, time of raising children, 30s, 40s, 50s. So why do you feel like Think Tank is so effective in women?
Yeah, it's a good question, and so I don't. I'll be fully upfront. We're not sure we totally understand the biology of at this point in time. We are maybe a little bit of a spoiler. We are going to do a human study with an academic partner in the UK this year, with looking at a publication probably
Hmm,
early in 2026, maybe into first quarter, beginning of second quarter of
that's awesome.
2026. Yeah, so that's
So
a
cool.
super exciting. We're just in the final throes of getting the protocol kind of hammered out, and it'll be like, again, very transparent, very above board, high quality, academic research on humans and women in particular, and we're kind of
Hmm.
targeting a specific age. But the point you brought up, Lauren, is actually it's almost purely organic, and what I mean by that is, I mentioned maybe a couple times in a ham-handed way, some of the early test markets we did, and even some of the early kind of commercial launch experience. And so at every turn we're asking for feedback. Or like, hey, let us know what you think. If you love it, if you hate it, if you had some sort of negative side effect, just let us know. And so and we ran some early surveys with those test markets, and overwhelmingly the feedback and the most feedback, and definitely the most positive feedback we had, was from women in that like 30 to 60, 70 year
Hmm.
age range. And I think there's some things like the marketer, if maybe you have some MBAs that listen to this and they'll be like, oh, well, that's the group that's more likely to give you feedback. And that's probably true. But even when we started to control and like ask people like, hey, like give us, more specific, broader test markets, asking, each one of the different people, regardless of kind of gender, age, background, for their feedback. Even when we
Hmm.
started to control for some of those, potential confounders, again, like the women in that age range were giving us the most positive feedback. So we're not exactly sure why, but again, it's been kind of organic of just like, hey, it just seems to work the best it was like the most noticeable effects, or they notice the effects themselves more than maybe somebody who's maybe less into with their body, who's, there's some theories behind here where it's like, look, if there's some things that are happening to you at that stage of your life that's, impacting your sleep, or, maybe like your diet or some of that kind of thing, or maybe your body's just maybe not using certain, minerals, you're not getting access to them as much as you could. So maybe some of those neurotransmitter precursors we're providing, or the increase in kind of, physically like energy that you get from part of the think tank formulation that may be especially beneficial for people in that stage of life. So those are just hypotheses. We'll look to test some of that, like I said, in the clinical study, or the human study we're going to run. But that's, maybe just, but again, I think the feedback has just been overwhelmingly positive within that demographic.
Knowing your market. So do men still experience brain fog the way that women do sometimes?
Yes. Yeah. And
Okay.
age related as well. Yeah. So I think the mechanisms are probably different, and, maybe I'm sure there's obviously differences between men and women in some of these different pieces, but yeah, I mean, I think there's like kind of that age related cognitive decline. And I mean, I'm almost, 50 years old. And I think that's something where I'm like, yeah, like, do I feel quite as just like, sharp or on it as I did when I were, in my 20s and 30s? Maybe no. I mean, maybe my ego was a lot more healthy back then, and I'm a little more realist at this day and age. But yeah, so I think that's the answer is, yeah, I think there is still that age-related cognitive decline in both genders. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. As we start to end this episode, I'd love to hear from you. What has this whole experience meant and really taught you about yourself?
Yeah, it's another good one. I think one is I think we touched on this when we were, like, how did I get started, or why did we do this? And I think part of like kind of the analysis of the things that I like to do the most in my professional career is I really like building things. So it's like, if you ask me, like, some people like, like people like doing different things, with their time in their professional career, and somebody likes you like some people I maybe like call them optimizers. So it's like, look, if you give me something and I got to make this process run, 5 or 10% more efficiently, like that's their jam. Like that's not my jam. Like my jam is like, okay, hey, we don't have a process, we're doing this, we don't know what we're going to do, or if there's any value in doing it. Nate, can you go figure it out? It was like, yeah, like that's the kind of stuff that I like to do. So I think that was, that introspection, and kind of like, even in doing this, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, this is what I really, really enjoy doing. So to kind of go along with that, I think the other kind of thing that I learned about myself, or that was kind of surprising in this process, is how different like sales, like hardcore, like, consumer packaged goods sales and marketing is from like product develop, like, strategy and product development and that kind of space. So like I spent basically my entire career in pharma. I was never a sales and marketing guy. I was always like the strategist, the product development guy. Even when I was a chemist, like I was way before that thing was ever going to go into humans or ever going to go into a clinical trial. And so, I spent my, 25 plus years of my career doing that stuff. And now like being responsible for sales and marketing and promotion and that kind of stuff. It's a different beast. And it's like, you got to like, shift that mindset, quite a lot. So it's just like, hey, like there's learning and learning agility that you have to do. And again, you're going to make mistakes, but nothing's fatal. Like we can figure that out. But that's probably the two different things.
What do you feel like has been the biggest obstacle?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, probably just the number of unknowns. So I know it's an old Donald Rumsfeld quote, from back in the prior administration. But I think that's probably been just the biggest obstacle of just like, things you didn't know to ask, right? Or things you didn't know you had to solve, or things you didn't know to figure out. And that's probably the same with any business or any, anything that's out there. But I think that's, just making sure that you've got, I think question was like, well, what do you do about that? Right. It's like, well, you're just making sure you've got the humility and you maintain that, I would say kind of like agility, that some of
Mhm.
that humility will give you, right? So I think that's, maybe my biggest obstacle is like I fall in love with my ideas, and so those unknown unknowns, you don't you don't think to pivot and ask, and like maybe the signal was over here and you ignored it, and so it remained, right, an unknown unknown. But it's like maybe you kind of take those blinders off, or you're like, hey, you kind of open yourself up with a little bit of extra humility, right? You're like, oh gosh, maybe I don't have this right, or maybe I shouldn't have been in love with this one ingredient of the formulation. Maybe okay, So I think maybe a little bit of falling in love with your ideas, especially when you spend a lot of time and energy and it's a passion area of yours. That's
Mhm.
easy to do, super easy for me to do. But and again, I think that because it blocks off, kind of your openness to figuring out some of those things you didn't know to ask about.
Mhm. And you have 2 kids. You have 2 boys, you and Amanda do.
Yeah,
What has it
yeah.
been like them kind of on this experience and ride with you?
Yeah, so they've it's funny. Yeah, so we have two boys. To kind of see me outside of that corporate environment, and to be a lot more accessible. I think kind of through that, and so again, entrepreneurship is not easy. It takes a lot of time, but it also has maybe some aspects of flexibility when you're your own boss, and then you can fill in the hours, when they're at school and that kind of thing. But I think
Mhm.
it's also been good for them to see, me learn something new, right? So it's like the job I was in pharma for 25 years. I had, the job I left, I had been doing basically the same job for 7, 8 years. And so it's like could I do it in my sleep? Yeah, I mean, I had it down pretty well, right? So now to see me come out like, hey, I'm going to do something totally new. We're gonna, I remember I had this eureka moment when like my little impulse sealer actually worked to make my first packet, and I was ecstatic about that. And so I think
Mhm.
it was cool for them, to see, that growth. They're like, yeah, you can redo yourself, or you can figure things out, or you can experiment. And some experiments are going to go really poorly, and other stuff is going to go, maybe it goes well, and you learn from that and you build on it. And so I've been really open with them. I mean, I've had them, you know, sticking labels on some of our first test products. They help us make, when we have little sample packs, if some of your audience wants some of those will probably be made or assembled, by the kids here in the kitchen.
Mhm.
So
I love that.
yeah, yeah. So if it's kind of a skew, they did it. If it looks perfect, that's me. But no, that's I think it's been really that's been a really eye-opening and just amazingly rewarding kind of side benefit of this.
Well, given the people behind it, I have a lot of, excitement of what this brand is going to evolve to.
Well,
So,
thank you. Thank you.
as this kind of our last question, but
Yeah.
what can the listeners expect from Sköshify as we kind of move forward into fall, into spring? You've kind of tapped into a couple of things that are coming through the pipeline, but what can they expect from the brand?
Yeah, so we actually have another product that's in development right now. We are kind of waiting to pull the trigger to like kind of the full manufacturing scale. So we already have a brand for it. It'll be called Engine Room. So Think Tank is more on the memory focus, kind of cognitive improvement. Engine Room is going to be more physical endurance, physical energy, that kind of thing. So we formulated that one. It's a bit of a spin on bulletproof coffee. And that's one that we think is going to be pretty interesting, for us. And so we've done some test markets already. We got some really good feedback for it, and so stay tuned for that. That's probably going to be maybe fourth quarter this year, maybe early first quarter of 2026. That you'll see Engine Room coming out there.
So, who will the market be for Engine Room?
That is a great question. So we're trying to figure this out, like how to narrow it down a
Mhm.
little bit and be a little bit more specific for it. But the feedback that we've had, actually, it's been people who either like maybe have like feel some fatigue, so like you didn't sleep well the night before, or maybe you're going to kind of test yourself. You're going to go for like a big workout, that kind of thing. So that's usually kind of the people we're looking at. Um,
Mhm.
Definitely going to be, I think, targeting even some of that, like the similar age range that we're looking at with think tank. So kind of that 30 to 70, 30 to 80 maybe age range, I think is going to be kind of that sweet spot. Again, just like I think just like happens as you age. It just maybe like I just don't feel as energetic as I used to. Again, whatever mechanism, whatever reason that is, and I think this is something where again that age range has noticed some differences. My parents are in their mid 80s, and they're like, well, hey, when are you coming out with this thing? It's like, we'll send them samples and test stuff on them as well. But that's like engine room as well as think tanker. That's been some of the things they really enjoyed. But part of our delay in this is like we don't want to sell it as a pre-workout. That's not the right kind of focus for this. That's not the right science behind the engine room product. But just trying to figure out like, hey, who's that that real target market for it. So we got a little bit more research to do on that one. So if folks want to give it a shot, we'll make we've got another set of prototypes that are coming out. We do some more test marketing. Would love to get feedback on it. I think the more feedback we can get, the better off we're going to be. So we can contact us for that one too. We're happy to share that, and just all we'd ask for is some open and honest feedback on the new products.
Well, that's a great opportunity. If you're interested and you're feeling those same symptoms, why not see, there's lots of different options out there. So why not see if it'll work or not for you?
Yeah, indeed.
Well, thank you, Nate, for this conversation. I'm very excited. It was just my main hope for this particular podcast episode was one, to be able to share someone here local in our community that has started a business and is pursuing something that they're passionate about. There's a purpose behind it, kind of share what the whole process has been like to be able to see an idea come to fruition. And, like for you, it's like it showed up at the door and it was in a packet and in a box and all of those things. So being able to share that, and then also tapping into what kind of benefits does this clean product have in the wellness space and how it can be a great tool for someone who's needing to add something to their wellness routine.
Perfect.
So,
yep.
Well, thanks so much for being on the Erie Wellness Podcast. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, friends, before we wrap up, here's the part I need to read to you. You know how it goes. This podcast is presented solely for educational purposes. I am just your friend behind the mic. I'm not a licensed therapist or doctor, and nothing you hear here is meant to replace the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or any other qualified professional. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you back here in the next episode. That's a wrap for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Erie Wellness Podcast. I truly appreciate you being a part of this journey. If you loved today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more daily wellness inspiration and behind-the-scenes content, be sure to follow me on Instagram at the Erie Wellness Podcast. I can't wait to connect with you again soon.